What's up guys, it's Jerry and
JC here.
Today we want to talk a little bit about the prices and future of modern versus vintage Pokemon cards. So we'll let JC start off first with the modern part of it.
When I started collecting Pokemon again, it was pretty much the Sun and Moon and Scarlet and Violet era. So I remember when I first started in Costco, there were 151 UPCs and ETBs and whatnot laying around.
Good times.
Good times. I actually remember the last time I remember seeing everything on the shelves was probably Surging Sparks ETBs. And that was about the last time I've ever seen Pokemon on the shelves. And then the craze started, and you guys must have seen all the videos in Costco, people fighting over Prismatic. So that's exactly, whenever that was, maybe a year ago, that's exactly when I got back into collecting because I was attracted by the new artwork. So the illustration rares and the special illustration rares, I've never seen cards like that before. I know in the mid-era there were full arts, but full art to me was just kind of like the Pokemon itself in the background, and it was cool. It was like animated and everything, but with these new arts, it almost looked like artworks, and I really like art myself, so I think anyone who likes art would enjoy all these new cards. So I went in, I tried to look for packs. They were impossible to get, so I ended up buying a lot of the singles, and I noticed that modern singles actually can be pretty high in price when they first release, but also because you cannot find any of these packs in stores, on shelves, online, or on the Pokemon Center website. So for you to go buy these singles, a lot of these people are going to list it for really high prices. Like the first day prices are usually very high, and then you'll see these cards after a few weeks start dropping off a little bit to where they should be. I want to say sealed products for new Pokemon cards like Scarlet Violet era are pretty expensive compared to what I remember the mid-era and vintage cards were back then. Only because I feel like it's just a supply and demand issue. Like the MSRP should be roughly the same as before, but because they can't even pump enough product out to meet all the needs, some of these stores like Walmart or Target, they're gonna jack up the price a little bit more, and resellers would have more room to actually sell these at higher prices, and people would buy them because they're just so in demand and so hard to come by. So I think modern cards nowadays have more people onto them than the mid-era cards and vintage cards. I think back then it was mainly Pokemon collectors, but now you just have collectors in general.
I feel like for Pokemon, especially in the modern market, there's a lot of investors now, so that kind of drives the prices up. Obviously, there's a section of, for example, streamers, rip and shippers. They consume a lot of product, so they're always scavenging for these products. There's people that have bots and whatnot, so they're able to basically grab a lot of these products from people like collectors. But then at the same time, there's also a lot of investors now, because based on the kind of speculation as well as the kind of market trajectory, people realize that Pokemon could be fairly good investment / an asset class of its own. So there's been news obviously recently about how Pokemon cards have been outperforming the S&P, and people have really considered Pokemon cards to be another investment avenue. So mixed along with these rip and shippers as well as these investing people now, it's definitely going to drive the prices up, because collectors that want to collect a card can no longer find product. So there's a lot of FOMO these days too. People also pay the higher prices, then it creates a new kind of standard where Pokemon cards are just going to be a higher cost. Because of the seal product is going to be high, because the demand, then the singles are going to be higher too, because the price to pull them is even higher as well.
With new products, like you've never seen, I could be wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you've never seen such a fast growth. Some people would pay more for a sealed ETB than to just buy the chase card that they want from the set, because the ETB sealed now might be worth more than what the cards inside would be worth. They're seeing it as more of an investment avenue. The perception of Pokemon cards and the perception of sealed product has changed. Growing up, the biggest issue that we think modern will run into in the future is that if there's so many sealed modern products in the future, will it make the market crash and everyone tries to sell it? It's hard to say.
People do discuss saying that there's probably a new baseline / support line now, because there are so many investors. And for example, if these investors bought a box at, let's say, $300, they're not going to sell it for $200. There's two types of people right now in today's market where they say, oh, prices are just going to keep going up and there's going to be a new support line, so it won't dip to the kind of scale that it's dipped before. And then there's people that say, oh, it's a bubble, it's definitely going to pop, right? Prices are going to go back to more normal / MSRP. And honestly speaking, I feel like I see the reasoning from both of them. At the same time, there's a lot more investors, so there's a lot more sealed product out there that's being held. Those kind of products would kind of control the market. They're not going to sell it for that much of a loss. But at the same time, there's a lot of rip and shippers, and products are being opened more than ever, right? So Pokemon is printing more than ever, distribution, they're trying to meet the demands, right? Could that make it go down? And then also at the same time, the bubble popping and whatnot, like, I don't know. Personally, I feel like it won't dip to the lows of 2023 or 2024, but you never know. Like, as time goes on, maybe Pokemon, the kind of fame and celebrity status of it gets worn down a little bit. People kind of forget about it, right? And then maybe they're over leveraged in the products that they have right now, so they do sell it off. And once people do start selling off, then usually the way it works is people start panic selling, right? So that could be a very possible kind of outcome, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think Pokemon Company has probably been printing more cards than they used to
Probably.
meet demand.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
even with, like, you guys seeing the felt hat Pikachu over, what was it, 14,000 population?
40,000.
40,000 population in PSA 10, and guess what? Price is not going down because people are starting to realize you have a 10, I have a 10. Both of our cars are worth this amount of money. I thought it would make a difference, but from the looks of it, a lot of these high-end cars, Moonbryons, EVs, these Grail cards, even if they have high pop, each one of them is worth the same, and they're all going to keep going up. And I think sealed products are going to see the same. I think in the future, if you're going to have more people keep sealed products, that might mean some of the singles in there might be going up because there's less singles opened up, or other way around. But I actually think the sealed boxes would actually go with the same trajectory as how the population for like PSA 10s are doing. I don't think just because in the future there's going to be 100,000 people with prismatic sealed ETBs, it's going to drop back down to MSRP in 20 years. I don't see that.
Yeah.
And just because, like Jerry said, there is a baseline because these investors paid a certain amount for them and they won't sell it for under that. Same with any markets.
So do you think, because when people were collecting, for example, booster boxes back then, number one, they collected for the art, right? And they collected for the set or whatever reason it is. But those people purely collected for the purpose of collecting. Obviously, if you collected it for the purpose of investing, then props to you, kudos. But at the same time, it's like that kind of mindset has completely changed these days. So people collect mainly to invest.
Yes.
So do you really think, like, you know how a booster box back then, like, I don't know how much it cost back in the 2000s, but they're probably worth like $30,000, $40,000 now.
Yeah.
Like, do you really think modern kind of booster boxes and whatnot can get to that kind of scale?
No.
Especially it's been, right? It's been printed so much. So like, I feel like the rate of return is definitely going to be lower.
Yes.
Right?
That's why people are buying more. Back then, you just need to buy one box. And you sit on it, and you're good. But now you need more. So it's the rate of return is definitely less because there's going to be more product. But you don't know. Like certain sets, Evolving Skies and whatnot, like you think 20 years from now it can't get to 15K maybe.
Probably.
Like you.
Evolving Skies is so good.
Right? So it depends on the set too.
Yeah.
I think with
For sure.
later Jerry's gonna talk about vintage, but I think with vintage sets it's that when we're buying Jungle or base 1, base 2, who thought of collecting it? Like we didn't even think, we thought $100 for that box was too much, when we first bought them. So no one thought anything about collecting or making money off them. Everyone opened it, no one put it in the sleeve even. So if you really think about it, the whole concept of Pokemon card collecting, if you had a perfect box from before, it's rare, right? The pop is actually really low. But with these new ones, there's gonna be more sealed in the future. So my prediction is that we will not see a booster box in 20 to 30 years time, like a Journey Together become 30 grand. No, I don't even think it will become 5 grand, let's be honest. But it will not stay at MSRP. That's what I think.
Fair. Yeah, and to move on, vintage, the way I see it is, okay, so there's two avenues of collectors / investors. A lot of people like JC here, they got captivated by the modern art, so it brought them back into the hobby, and that's what they like, right? They collect that for a while. For me, it was quite the opposite. I actually got captivated by vintage, and then it reminded me, so I took the nostalgia route, right? What I did notice from the past kind of 3 years is that although there's still a lot of people that like modern, and you would assume that every single kid likes modern, but I see a lot of kids these days that also like vintage. And to me, like, it kind of questioned on why these kids like vintage when there's cards that have so much artwork, it feels all encompassing, But I started to kind of realize that because of the pop report, although demand is higher for modern cars and the pop report is higher, so it kind of cancels out and it still drives the prices up. I do see a lot of modern collectors that basically collected and got back into the hobby because of modern start to trickle down into high-end vintage. And I don't know, maybe that's just like, it opens your eyes to new things. You're starting to, let's say, mature a bit in your kind of collecting goals. So you trickle down into high-end, for example, like crystals, shinings, gold stars, even mid-era, like EXs, e-readers, and these kind of cards, right? So cards with lower pop reports and basically cards to get like a good grade. I notice a lot of them kind of trickle down into the vintage space. And I mean, vintage cards have been pretty steady up until now, right? Obviously, there's a huge spike in the very high-end kind of cards, but at the same time, it's like you don't really see vintage having a major crash aside from that COVID boom, right? I feel like it holds its value pretty well. Meanwhile, modern cars are very speculative. You could have a a new car that just came out and then there's a lot more kind of pump and dumps with it, right? And the good thing about vintage is that the print's already over. So what you got is what you got, right? Like if we want vintage, we're all going to be fighting for the same pool of cards and trying to like outbid each other. At the same time though, I feel like my question is, do you think people would rather spend $5,000 on a prismatic Moonbryon or Sunbryon, a set that just came out a year ago and is most likely still going to be in print? Or do you think you'd be more willing to spend $5,000 on Gold Star or one of the high-end vintage cards?
Speculation, depends how you think. That just depends on how you think the hobby would go. Let's say this is my theory, okay? That everything comes down to supply and demand and what are the numbers available. So in the future, right now, there's a lot of prismatic going to be pending for the next 2 years. You go on Walmart, you can get it for MSRP. So people who are collecting or who are buying these things, they're buying it at the low and then they're selling it at the high. So you have to go with the wave. Usually when the new set comes out, like prismatic will print for like 2 years. So with that 2 years, it'll keep printing and reprinting. But once that print run has completely disappeared, two things will happen with these new sets in my opinion. One is there's gonna be a lot of sealed products, but the sealed will start getting sold off. The next 5 to 10 years, the sealed product will become less and people have opened the cards more. So they're gonna balance out the price. People are gonna pull more SIRs, they're gonna pull more God packs and whatnot. But let's be honest, pull rates are hard. Even if you add another 1,000 Umbreons onto the market, I don't think it drops the Umbreon card price. And then the prismatic boxes will become less and less over the years. So technically it will still go up in price, in my opinion. But how fast? I don't know. The Mudkip Gold Star, probably faster, just because you cannot get those sets for a long time anymore. And people who have bought those sets and opened them on streams or break channels, once those ones get opened up, the other boxes go up in price as well, because there's less and less and less. So as the years go on, anything that you're holding on to that's limited quantity would be more expensive, even if it wasn't a desire set before. I can't name any from the top of my head, but Jerry would know some. There's sets before that no one wanted that today are worth a fortune because no one wanted it before, so no one bought it. And now whoever bought it, it was worth a lot. And Pokemon didn't print them for the full year because no one wanted it. So it's gonna be differences. It depends on how you guys feel about certain things. Some people might go for that. Like Jerry said, if you think the modern can do higher than the vintage 10 years from now and you got the time, maybe you go for the modern. But if you want something that's already stable and might not go down at all anymore because it's already at a very matured pricing, go for the Gold Star. But the Umbreon that you're getting that just came out could still go down a little bit. Yeah. So it depends what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah, honestly, I have respect for the modern game as well.
Yeah.
Because today's modern is going to be, in 20 years, is vintage.
Yes.
Right? So the kids growing up on it, the cards nowadays are going to be their nostalgia factor.
You see that new card that came out? Booger Mew?
Yeah.
Booger Mew? That one's crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of differences, right, between modern and vintage and how the prices have been and as well as the future of it. If you guys appreciate the content, please give us a like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next one.
Peace. Thank you.